Hello, everyone. This is Father Son Galaxy. I am Kerwin, and this is Keith. We posted our first YouTube video on March 21st, 2021, talking about how much we love Star Wars. In this episode, we are celebrating our 5th anniversary. Now, there are plenty of Star Wars podcasts out there, and as the new kids on the block, we needed to find a way to get some exposure. And we did, thanks to our next guest. Stephanie Farr is a columnist who joined the Philadelphia Daily News in 2007, covering crime, features, and general assignment stories. After the Daily News and the Philadelphia Inquirer merged in 2016, Stephanie was assigned a new beat, Philly culture, writing stories about what makes the city weird, wild, and wonderfully unique. Before joining the Philadelphia Press, Stephanie worked for the Williamsport Sun-Gazette. She is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh with a dual major in nonfiction writing and communications. Stephanie, welcome to Father Son Galaxy.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Kerwin.
Thank you. As we said, you've contributed a lot to the success of our podcast, so we're going to talk about it. We're just so glad to have you. Thank you so much. And I know you have a bit busy schedule.
Mm, That means the world to me. It was such a wonderful day being at your house. I remember it very vividly.
Yes, thank you.
You wrote in your bio that you're not a Philly native, but you wish you were. So,
Mhm.
where are you from?
I am originally from a place in central New York called Utica, New York. That's where I was born and where my extended family still lives. And we moved around a lot when I was a kid. So we lived everywhere from Atlantic City to Daphne, Alabama. And I went to high school in a place called Montoursville, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Williamsport, though Williamsport doesn't really have suburbs. So I kind of was from small towns everywhere and went to college at Pittsburgh, which was my first big city experience, and after that, I knew I wanted to be in a city. So, I kept visiting Philly while I was living in Williamsport and fell in love, and so this is the one.
What is it that you loved about Philly?
I loved the people, I still do. Yeah, I came here, I thought I'd stay 5 years, and that was 19 years ago now, so I really love the attitude of the people. I love how honest Philadelphians are. You know where you stand with them immediately, whether it's good or bad. They are not afraid to speak their mind, and while, we have a reputation for maybe not being so nice, I've always found that people here are incredibly kind. They will go out of their way to help you in a tough situation, and, they often approach me on the street. I love the interaction with strangers in Philadelphia. People aren't afraid to just go up and start a conversation. Plus, it's a culture that's not really image-based as much as a lot of other cities like New York and LA. You can walk down the street in an Eagles hoodie and feel perfectly fine. I mean, you'd probably be the most fit-in person there in the city, so all of that, topped with the history and, the neighborhoods and just the diversity and the walkability. Yeah, all of it I loved.
Yeah. Well, your story is similar to mine. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
Mhm.
And I actually decided to live in Philadelphia because I got accepted to Temple University. So I lived there for a few years. And when I graduated, I decided to stay.
Mhm.
And it ended up being about 18 years after graduation that I stayed in Philadelphia. Well, I moved in the area. So I wasn't always in Philadelphia. I lived at one point in Wilmington, Delaware for a few
Okay.
years.
Mm.
Um, Decided to move back up north in the mid 2000s, North Jersey, and then came back 10 years later in King of Prussia, where you met us. So we're back in the area where I was since I was 20 years old. Yeah, it's what I like about the city is I knew it wasn't going to be like Brooklyn because I know Brooklyn to me was very busy. It was crowded. I didn't like commuting on the trains because it's just so many people. I felt like to get from Brooklyn into Manhattan just took, a long time, especially when you're on a crowded train.
Sure.
And I wanted to, avoid that, and I wanted to live in a smaller city, but I didn't want to be too far from home. And the Philadelphia was just to me a perfect location for me to live in.
Yeah, yeah, and it pulled you back, I'm glad.
It did. It did, yeah. And so from someone coming from a different city,
Mhm.
how did you adapt to life in Philadelphia? What is it maybe didn't know about the city and maybe something that you had to change about how you live?
Well, the employment tax really took me through a loop. Yeah, that was I wasn't used to that's such a high employment tax, just for the privilege of working in Philly. I had to get used to that. I had to really get brave in ways I hadn't been before. I really had to put myself out. So when I came to Philadelphia, I had never covered a murder. I had never covered a press conference because there was only one press in my previous town, the paper that I worked for. So they would just call us. So I would, you know, be sent into neighborhoods doing what they would call house ends. If somebody was killed the night before, I would have to find out where they lived and just go knock up on their door, drive to neighborhoods I'd never been to, talk to people I'd never talked to, and ask them to tell me, their stories during the most difficult times in their life. And that was a really, really challenging, thing for me, and I really struggled with it emotionally, but I also feel like it made me a much better person and a much better journalist because, not only did I push myself to do things that made me feel uncomfortable, what I would find was how willing people were to share their stories with me, a complete stranger, and, you know, there was a level of trust there that I never really took for granted or I took lightly. Um, and so covering, crime and police really helped me learn the city. Um, Once I had several years under my belt and I felt like I could start telling stories, I tended towards the weirder things. That's just kind of where my mind goes. That's what I find really interesting about the world. And specifically, people. I've always been fascinated with, the many different ways there are to live life in this world, and I wanna know pretty much everything about everybody. So, I mean, being a reporter is good because you get to be nosy professionally and ask questions of people that maybe you wouldn't otherwise ask.
Mhm.
And so, once I got to be able to write more features, I really think I found my voice, but I wouldn't have found that voice, and I wouldn't have the same knowledge of the city if I didn't do those hard stories before.
Why were you interested in getting into journalism?
I fell into it, which is really random because I don't think anybody falls into it anymore. It's a pretty difficult field these days. The job prospects aren't great, the pay's not great. Um, but I knew I had a teacher in high school. I had 2 teachers in high school, a history teacher and an English teacher who made me believe before I believed in myself that I could be a writer. They saw something when I would write essays, and they really pushed me, to kind of explore that and to trust myself that I had something to say and something worth writing. And so when I went to college, I went in undecided and took a couple writing courses. And, once I found the nonfiction department, that really spoke to me. Writing stories, true stories with fictional techniques, I think was really interesting. And then the communications dual degree was because I didn't think just having a writing degree was the best idea of going forward. I thought, having a communications background would help as well. And it actually is, I found it very fascinating, the communications end. Understanding how media works, how advertising works, and, I think a lot of journalists can go into PR as well and, marketing and all that stuff, so that background's, pretty good too.
Mhm. And then working, on the streets and interviewing people, was that something that you immediately knew that was your fit for you? Or were you ever thought about working behind a desk in a newsroom or on television as an anchor person?
Well, I never really wanted to be on TV, so that's no, and I knew that was the writing that I really liked, you know, when I graduated college with these degrees, I my last, semester was actually at a study abroad program, so I got off the study abroad program. I had to go back in and live with my dad and stepmom in this small town, and I had no idea what I was gonna do with my life, and it was a really scary time. I ended up working 3 part-time jobs, one of them being, doing freelance work for the local paper in Williamsport, and my first full-time job that they hired me for at the paper was as an obituary writer. So that used to be a way a lot of people got their foot in the door in journalism is writing obituaries. You know not to get any facts wrong or you will hear about it. You recognize that these stories matter a lot to people. And so you want to get it right and you want to, honor the person whose story you're telling. Um, yeah. And so after that, I kind of moved up to covering, you know, school board meetings and city council meetings. But my favorite part was always when I would get to go out somewhere and interview somebody. So I always tell when I speak to journalism students now, I always tell them my favorite things about this job or it takes me to places I wouldn't otherwise go and it introduces me to people I wouldn't otherwise meet. And there's just nothing like that. To go on adventures for a living and then to get to tell people about it. Yeah, I feel very grateful pretty much all the time.
Yeah, it must take some courage to really go up to a person that you've never met, a total stranger, and ask so many personal questions. But I guess after a while, it starts to tough you up because you know that's what you do. That's what you do for a living, and you can't be somebody who's afraid to ask the tough questions. And that's what we expect from our journalists. More so now than ever.
Yeah, I also tell kids that I speak to that taking theater and acting classes is a really good idea. And why I say this is because you're not going to start out with confidence. And there are even some situations I find myself in now where I am very nervous or not feeling confident about having to approach someone or interview someone. And so to be able to lean back on those theater techniques where I can at least appear confident, even if I'm screaming inside, I think that has been really helpful and also public speaking because if you're in a gaggle of 40 other reporters and you have to raise your hand and ask a question, that's a form of public speaking, right? And that's can be really nerve-wracking for young journalists. So I always think theater is good in a lot of careers, but especially in journalism to take some classes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, like I said, went to college at Temple. I was 20 years old. I was so naive. I haven't been anywhere else outside of New York City. And, it was a little bit of a shock to the system to see things in this city that I've never seen before anywhere else. For example, I remember the first time I saw a trolley pass by. I had no idea, what a trolley was, or I thought they only existed in San Francisco, based on what I see on TV. The Rice-A-Roni commercials. That was the only time I knew what a trolley was. The murals are incredible to look at, in the buildings. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before. We don't have that in New York.
Yeah.
And then I also realized how much this city loves their sports teams. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And, I didn't follow sports.
Mhm.
I'm still considered a casual fan, but there's nothing more exciting when your team is actually in the playoff runs, like the last few years, with the Eagles and the Phillies. And it's just everyone just seems to be on board, you know.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter whether you know the person or not. You see somebody pass by with the Eagles shirt, it's "Go Birds."
Right.
All you have to say, and you see the flags outside the homes, and again the hoodies and everything else, all that paraphernalia. It's just incredible to see. So that's we're a passionate city. When we root for the team when we're even when they're bad. Like we're
Right, we'll hate on them too, but we'll still root for them through
yeah.
gritted teeth. When I moved here, the sports editor at my previous paper, he knew I wasn't a sports fan. I didn't grow up in a sports household. I never played sports. And he told me, "You're moving to Philly. You're gonna have no choice but to be a sports fan." And I laughed at him and said, "I'm not gonna let some game that I can't control dictate, my joy." And then I moved here, and the next year the Phillies won the World Series, and I got it. And I saw how the city was electrified and how it was kind of about some being a part of something bigger than yourself. So it gives very Philly a very special sense of place in a lot of ways too, I think.
Yeah. And it's also a way to bond, right? As far as Keith, you could let me know what you think, but there have been times, I think this past year is probably um the time where we watched the most Eagles games, because we are just so
Mhm.
excited about this team. And,
Yeah.
we would make it, a habit. Okay, if we're home on Sunday, all right, are the Eagles on? Let's turn it on and just watch the game. So, just
Mhm.
like I said, I wasn't I'm only a casual fan, and I'm trying to introduce Keith to it. But I just like it that we can just sit down as a family and just watch the game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mm.
yeah. So let's talk about how we met you, Stephanie. All
Yeah.
right. So back in 2021, we decided that we were going to start a podcast. And, actually, I want to say it was Tanya,
I
that did-
remember that.
yes, she is always thinking ahead.
Mhm.
Um, she thought of the idea of us coming together and doing a podcast because of how much we love Star Wars. Keith, grew up as a Star Wars fan. And The Mandalorian was the big show on at the time, and we were sitting at the dinner table and we were talking about The Mandalorian. Um, Tanya recorded us and she put it on Facebook and she got some good feedback on it. But then we knew, okay, well, what else can we do? How can we get our name out there? And can you walk us through? I know that Tanya reached out to a person at the Inquirer, but how exactly did you hear about us?
So, yeah, I was wondering, I'm pretty sure that, my colleague Helen, my former colleague, she's no longer with the Inquirer, who's a columnist, Helen Ubenius, I don't know if Tanya reached out to her or somebody sent something her way, but Helen, knew that I had been doing this profile series for a long time called We the People. And this is a series where I profile, I hate the word everyday Philadelphians, but regular Philadelphians and people in the region, who aren't celebrities, who aren't politicians or typically famous in any way, who are the people who make our region what it is and who make it unique. I always find that everyday people are far more interesting than than the rich and famous anyway. So Helen was aware of this series. She was always a big cheerleader of it for me, and I think she found out about the podcast and sent you my way knowing that I was also a Star Wars fan as well. So when I read about, you 2, I said, "Yep, they sound like a perfect fit for that series," and I think I reached out
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah. It was amazing. I mean, when you reached out and you wanted to come to us in person to see how we, create an episode, and you sat with us and you brought your photographer. I think it was Jose Moreno.
Yep, yep, Jose.
Yes. Yeah. So this was in early 2021, and you came into our home and you took pictures. You actually sat and listened to us record an episode. And sure enough, it was in the paper, and I actually still have that paper here.
Oh,
This
great.
is, yeah, I mean, it's hard to see with the light, but
Mhm.
so this is the Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. It was in the life section that we appeared, and we were just so grateful for that. Uh,
Mhm.
but not only did were kind enough to interview us, you mentioned something about, okay, well, we need to get this to somebody in Star Wars. And and you when you said you were going to do something, you actually did it. And I like to know exactly how did that happen? Who was the person that you reached out to, and how did it happen?
So, I think I told you at the time I was a, big Twitter user, and, I have since, like many, gotten off of that platform for bluer skies, shall we say.
Mhm.
But I had a decent following account at my height, and I said, I'm gonna write the story and I'm gonna tag Mark Hamill and see if we can get you guys a response. Now, Mark Hamill was famously very active with engaging people on Twitter, and now I can't remember if he's on Blue Sky or Threads now, but he's moved over to another platform and is equally as positive. But I've always loved his interaction with fans, and like he seemed more accessible than maybe some other folks in the series. And so I believe I wrote the story and I tagged him in it, and I think shortly thereafter, he said, I don't know if it was in a reply or he retweeted, but I know that he sent a photo, maybe the gif of Luke giving the salute and saying, "Send my best wishes to Kerwin and Keith Yard, forcefully yours." So
Yes.
I remember freaking out. I might have been in the newsroom when I saw it, and I probably screamed.
And Keith, do you remember how we found out about it?
I don't really know. I just remember that your mom came to me and said, Mark Hamill sent us a tweet, and I was like, "What?" And yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. I mean, Tanya was screaming, and says, "You gotta see this, you gotta see this." And wow, sure enough. So it was from Mark Hamill. Thank you so much for that. And
Yeah. Well,
it's
it was
yeah, it's wonderful. I don't even know how to describe the feeling. It's just something I was not expecting.
yeah.
That was something that we really needed to get our podcasts out there, and it did turn some heads. It got some people noticed as to, well, okay, well, who are these people, father and son? So thank you once again for doing that.
Oh.
That
Oh, it
was
was my pleasure.
yeah.
So I have to ask, you guys have been, interviewing, Star Wars celebrities since then. I tend to not interview celebrities because I get nervous. Like, I'll interview the director of the US Secret Service, but don't give me any celebrities because I but, like, I saw your interview with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and, Diego Luna, who seems like the nicest human on the planet, which makes my heart happy because I love him and his characters. Was there a particular celebrity interview that you were really excited to get or that means the most to you 2?
Keith, you want to start?
that's a good question. I can't really say if any of our interviews have been like better than the others, but I will say I had a great time interviewing Diego Luna. That was a really fun one.
Yeah.
Billy D. Williams was also a great interview.
Oh, whoa, that's a great one too.
Yeah.
I would be nervous with that one too.
Yeah. Yeah, with Billy D. Williams, we were actually a part of what's called a podathon,
Okay.
where we were raising money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And we were this was our second year of being a part of this podathon. And, we just had to come up with, all right, well, who we want to interview. And we worked it out with Lucasfilm, and they were able to get us in touch with Mr. Williams' publicist, and they set it up. And yeah, I couldn't believe it, but yeah,
Oh,
yeah, Billy D. Williams. Yeah, I would say that's one of my favorites.
yeah.
Um, well, one that stood out for me is one of our earlier interviews was with a gentleman named Mark Daniel, who is a Disney legend. He's worked with the Disney company for a very long time, and we actually have a connection. His wife and my wife are actually high schoolers. So way back in the day, um, and he knows a lot of people in Star Wars. And he also knew that Keith was a big fan of Ahsoka.
I love it.
So right after we, ended the interview, he says, "Well, I got one more thing for you," and he played us a recording, and it was from Ashley Eckstein,
Mhm.
and we had no idea. And Keith's reaction to that, I'll never forget it. It was like Home Alone, like,
I remember seeing that video. It was
yeah,
so I think he said something in was it with the Dave Filoni interview that he was like, "Holy Skittles," and I was like, "I gotta use that from now on," or
yes, that was yeah. You remember that, Keith? Holy Skittles, yeah, that was.
something about Skittles. I was like,
Yeah,
"That's true."
no, that's right, that's right.
Oh Lord.
He's being
Alright.
modest. He's a teenager now. He doesn't want to talk about those days when he was younger, and. But
I
yeah,
get
I
it,
mean,
I get it.
yeah, that's wonderful. So
Yeah.
the stories that you are doing now. So, do you have a favorite Philly story that you covered? One or two favorite stories about the city?
Oh, wow. So, I get asked this question a lot, and it wasn't until I think it was 2021 or 2022 that I ever had an answer. This is a little bit it's a little bit heavier story, but it has a happy ending. I will say that. We got a message to our Instagram account, our branded Instagram account at the Inquirer from a woman, Cheryl Edwards, who reached out and said, I was abandoned as an infant in West Philadelphia, in a dumpster when I was a newborn, and I've never been able to find my family. And I would like to tell my story to show other people who may be in similar situations that you can be a success even if you've had a hard start. She was adopted by a wonderful family in West Philly and grew up, but I was always had these questions about her, her biological family. And when I asked why she had never done a DNA test, she said she was afraid that if she did so and was matched with someone, that they would just reject her all over again if she reached
Mm.
out, which is heartbreaking, but understandable for sure. And so I reported out her story. I went knocking on doors in the neighborhood of where she was found, tried to get what I could, found tidbits here and there that she hadn't been aware of yet. Um, we had several really powerful interviews over the course of months where we both cried. We were in tears. And while I was never able to find anyone, I said, she still wanted to go ahead with the story. And so we published the story. And within 24 hours of the story running, I get an email from someone who says, I believe that Cheryl is my cousin and that my aunt is her birth mother. I have a lot to tell you. Could you please contact me? And I still get goosebumps and I was covered in goosebumps when that email came through. And so I called the woman and she had many details about the first hours or days of Cheryl's life that she probably wouldn't have otherwise known.
Mm.
And I said, and she was surprised I called. She's like, I thought you'd get a million emails and you wouldn't respond. I'm like, no, this is exactly why my email is on here. And I had to tell Cheryl this. And, it's a really happy bit of news to deliver, but I felt like it was also really heavy to deliver because there was no proof this woman was related to her yet. And so when I made that call, it was one of the harder calls in my life. And I couched it by telling Cheryl, don't get too excited. We don't know. Until there's DNA testing, we don't know. But Cheryl called her. Um, they met. Eventually, she met an aunt. She was invited to a family barbecue. Uh, and she learned that her birth mother, the woman they said was her birth mother, was still alive and living in a nursing home in North Carolina, but unable to speak due to a stroke.
Mm.
And so eventually DNA testing does prove that this is Cheryl's birth family, that the woman who reached out is her first cousin, that the people around her at this gathering were her family. And she goes down to that nursing home in North Carolina and visits her birth mother and walks in the room with her cousin. And her cousin asked um, the birth mother if she knew who Cheryl was. And she looked at Cheryl and she pointed at her stomach and then pointed at her heart to let Cheryl know that she knew. And, you know, she broke down in tears. They had a lovely
Yeah.
moment. Cheryl got to show her pictures of her son. And, you know, came back and a few months later the woman died in the nursing home. But Cheryl
Wow.
got to meet her
Wow.
before she passed. She got to meet her birth mother, and she now has this whole other family because she's still close with her adopted family. She has this whole other birth family that she'd always looked for her whole life. And so that's a very long story, but it
Mm.
really is a story that reminds me and really reinforced in me not only the power of journalism,
Mm.
but the power of telling your own story. None of this would have happened if Cheryl hadn't come forward and said, I want to share my story and I want to do it to potentially help other people. Um,
Yeah.
so that one means the most to me by far.
That's
And Cheryl and I are now good friends. She came to my wedding. When you go through that with somebody, it's a very bonding experience. They always talk about, separating yourselves, but I think our humanity is important in a lot of situations in journalism too.
wow. That's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. It still blows my mind that it
Yeah.
happened. So,
Do you have any idea why she reached out to you in
well, she
particular?
reached out to the Inquirer's branded Instagram account. She sent a direct message to our Instagram account, and
Okay.
then that message was forwarded to me. Now, why I was the person
Hmm.
that was chosen by my colleague who ran the Instagram account at that time, I can't say,
Yeah.
but I'd like to think it was because of this We the People profile series that I'd always done, and that I do really have a sincere interest in people and their stories, and, I hope my colleague recognized that. I'll be, forever grateful that she passed it along to me no matter the reason.
Yeah. And it's by
Mm.
fate too, I guess, because you have these stories because you are a people person.
Mm,
and that you care about the people who you talk to or you interact with. So, um, yeah, it just made sense. If someone needed to reach out to someone else and connect, then, Stephanie is the person to go to. So that's
yeah.
wonderful. That's
Oh, thank
beautiful.
you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty special in my heart.
Yeah. Keith, you want to take the next question about tourists? Do you see that one?
Hmm. So, for any tourists traveling to Philadelphia, what are some hidden treasures or under the radar spots people should visit?
Oh, so I think Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, well, it's not hidden or under the radar. I think that is the first. I had guests from out of town this weekend who'd never been here, and that's the first place I take them. This is Isaiah Zagar's giant walk-through mural on South Street in Philadelphia that takes up about 2 row home sizes, and you walk through it, and it's just incredible. It's a beautiful work. But what I did last year, I've been in the city, as I said, 19 years. I've walked through, the outside of City Hall and around it a lot of times, but I had never taken a tour of City Hall. And I had never taken, there are 2 tours. You can take the building tour where you go around to a lot of the big rooms and they talk about that and the architecture of building. And there's also the elevator tour. So you can actually take a very tiny 4-person, I think it may have fit 4 of us, elevator up to the top of the tower and stand directly below Williams Penn's feet there. And you get a 360-degree view of the city. And I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it was one of the coolest things I'd ever done in Philly. And I couldn't believe it had taken me so long to do it. And it's just there all the time. And I think when the story came out, a lot of people told me they didn't even realize you could do it. And I
Yeah.
heard from people afterwards um, who went and were thankful that, we had let people know that it was there. It's just very unique. And then the next door is the Masonic Temple, which you can also tour, which has these really interesting rooms architecturally that all have themes and things like that. So in the city, I definitely recommend those two experiences.
Nice.
And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that you could take a tour of City Hall. Is that
yeah.
something that you need a reservation to do, or can you just show up at City Hall?
No, it's through Visit Philly. So if you go on their website, Visit Philly, you can buy timed entry tickets. You may be able to just go to the visitors shop there in City Hall, but I think they do prefer you have time tickets because they can fill
Eh,
up. There aren't always spots available. Yeah. And let's see.
Keith, do you want to take the next question about upcoming events?
yeah. What kind of upcoming events are there in Philadelphia this year?
Just a few little things here and there. So we have the World Cup coming this year, which is going to be huge. I'm hoping to do some fan coverage at the game, so get into the game and go around interviewing the fans. But I think everybody in the city is really excited for that, and around the world. I can't wait to welcome people from around the world here and to really try and immerse myself in that soccer culture. And then we have the nation's 250th birthday. So, we are the birthplace of the United States, given that the Declaration of Independence was signed here 250 years ago. So, there'll be all sorts of celebrations, particularly ramping up around June and July. And they just announced today that I believe Queen Latifah is going to perform as part of this celebration. And a couple other big headliners will have some great music acts. I think there's going to be some great parades, tons of fireworks. So I'm really looking forward to being in the city during that time. And I'm hoping, and some of these events coincide. So I believe there is a World Cup game on July 4th. So that could be a really interesting day to be in Philadelphia. I'm hoping it will be kind of reminiscent of what it was like in the city during Pope Francis's visit in 2015, where it was, a really joyous occasion. They had shut down a lot of streets. You were walking everywhere. You were, with people from all over the world. But, obviously we're really monitoring the situation in terms of, other angles and things as well. Philadelphia is uh, a big fan of protesting. Philadelphians are great protesters, I think. We are really good at using that First Amendment, as we should be. And so, we'll keep our eyes and ears to the ground about stuff like that as well. So I may be covering some of that stuff too.
Yeah. Now, do you know in particular what you'll be covering, or is it just right now it's too early to tell?
Yeah, right now it's too early to tell. I can maybe throw my hat in the ring for some things. But depending on beats, some people may have right of first refusal if it's something they always cover. But volunteering early and often for assignments you want is always a good idea. And then finding things, maybe adjacent stories as well, is great. So I could be doing that too when everybody comes to town. Are there fans of, the Brazil soccer club gathering at a particular Philly bar? Well, I can go and sit in with them and see how they enjoy the game and what they think of the city. I'm always really interested in what outsiders, what kind of takeaway they come back with from Philly and how they see us and our city.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's going to be very exciting this summer. It's
It really is.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course, it has to be in Philadelphia, it's the birthplace,
Hmm.
250 years. So, Keith, you have any idea what you want to do during the summer? Guess we haven't really talked about it.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Too early to tell.
too early to tell. Yeah,
Are
but
you a summer camp kind of guy or no?
Not by choice.
that's true. That's
Uh,
true. So, Keith is actually looking for a summer job.
Oh,
So
awesome. I had my first job when I real job when I was 14, so
yeah,
yeah, a good
yeah,
age to get one.
yeah, yeah. So that's the next step. I think his summer camp days are over.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You could
absolutely.
get a job at a movie theater. You got any place you wanna work, Keith?
I don't know. We just gotta find out.
I feel like if I grew up around here, I would wanna work at Wawa, but that's just me. I do love Wawa, so
Yeah, yeah. We have a Wawa close by.
there you go.
It's awesome. All right. Stephanie, thank you so much for this. And, once again, I just want to say thank you for, the incredible work that you do and what you did for us. And, I mean, you single-handedly put us on the map.
Oh, no.
Our
You
podcast.
guys did all the hard work. You put
Yeah.
yourselves on the map. I just had the honor of telling people about
Yeah.
you.
So thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to meet you. I know it's been a while since we've seen each other in person. Well, maybe we'll run into each other this year, maybe.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love that. Are you guys gonna be, at Fan Expo this year or anything?
That is the
Yup.
plan. Yeah, yeah, it's not official yet, but, we've been there for 4 years in a row.
Okay.
So we're hoping to show up again this year.
Well, please let me know if I am in the area. I need to come by and see it because I've watched the videos and it looks like you guys have great crowds and great interaction and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, it is a lot of fun. So, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, definitely, we'll do that.
yeah.
Where can people find you?
They can find my work on Inquirer.com. That's the Philadelphia Inquirer's website. I am on Blue Sky. See, I have to check. I'm so as a at Far, Far Away, I believe. To to yeah. At FARFARR away dot blue sky dot social and then on Instagram and threads as uh far far away 04444. um so yeah, I'm on social. You can throw me in and Google and it might pull out some stuff. It might pull out other Stephanies around the world, but
Yeah,
yeah, and I am looking forward. Oh, you know what else I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to the Mando movie. So that's on my calendar for this year for sure.
that's
Mm.
a very good point. Yeah, right. So it's been what, going on 7 years since we had a Star Wars movie in the theaters? It's amazing. Yeah,
It's
so
overdue, and yeah, I'm
yeah,
excited to get in. I'm probably gonna buy far too much Grogu stuff in the lead up to the
yeah,
movie, but that's okay.
yeah.
I'll rationalize it.
That's what they want us to do,
I
It's
know, I
it's all
know. I'm a
about Grogu.
sucker.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know if you call it the Oscars, but, that was, the Grogu made his, appearance. That was pretty
Yes,
fun.
he did. It was so
Yeah,
cute with
yeah,
Kate Hudson. I saw
yes,
that.
exactly. Yes, yeah. Well,
Uh,
they're promoting the movie, so we're
mm,
getting ready for it. So I'm looking forward to it too, and we will cover it, right, Keith? We're going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't
Can't.
miss it for the world.
That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
So, all right, Stephanie,
Awesome.
thank you once again. This was
Oh,
fun.
yes, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Kerwin and Keith. I really
Yep.
appreciate it. You guys always have a
Mm-hmm.
special place in my heart, and I have your story saved too. So
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you know what? We're going to frame this. I have it here. I have the newspaper, but we're going to frame it. We're going to put it up on our wall because it's a very important moment for us. So this story, it means a lot. So we're definitely thankful. So thank you once again.
thank you very much, and may the force be with you both.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
Where can
Yeah.
people find us, Keith?
You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Our socials are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Publishing Galaxy, website publishinggalaxy.com. Please check out our merch store, publishinggalaxy.myspreadshop.com, and our Patreon page, patreon.com/publishinggalaxy.
Thank you once again to Stephanie Farr, our guest columnist at the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this special episode. Until next time, take care, and we will see you again.